Hello everyone, welcome to the conclusion of this series on using autocomplete with Google Places. And so we've gotten as far as being able to search our application for any place, and our map will go to it. And in this wrap-up episode, what we're going to do is implement this bottom section where we pick a service and we go back to Google Places and we say, okay, where is the nearest one of these? The map will adjust its bounds automatically. And we'll put a marker on the screen where that is. And for something like a campground, it's going to zoom out in most cases like that. All right, so that's what we're going to implement in this final episode. And while that boots up, that source code boots up in the emulator, let's go ahead and take a look at Google Places API's documentation again. And so we've been working pretty extensively with the Google Places API. We have originally done an autocomplete search, and that auto-completed our location, and then we got a place ID back. And so we went to Places Detail to get a specific location, which got us our latitude and longitude. And then for this last step where we say, okay, we have a location, now we want to know where the nearest church is or whatever. That's going to be a place search. And this is really kind of their bread and butter. So this has the most options for an API. And as it turns out, what works best for our purposes is a text search, which you would normally use for a pizza in New York or shoe stores near Ottawa, like it says here in the description. But down here it says if you're using a place type, you don't actually need a text search. So it seems a little funny to search without the text search using a text search, but we're not going to use text. We're just going to give it a place ID. And then we can use some of the parameters to hone in on a location, and we can give it a type, and we can use the order by to give us the closest location, pick the one off the top of the stack, and then we know where our nearest whatever that is. All right, so then down here in the overview section, we have a tab for place types, and these are the types that the Places search will respond to. And unfortunately, there's no, as far as I can tell, API for this or even a download. You just have to figure out from this list here what's active at any given time. And so we're just going to pick out a handful of these and offer them up to our user to be able to look for the closest one of those. All right, so if we slide back up to the Places search, let's start by building the search in our service. So like I said, we're going to grab not the nearby, but we're going to grab the text search request. So we're going to use a modification of this one. So I'll put this in Postman. I tried to up the font. It doesn't seem particularly responsive, so I'm not going to dwell too much on the options because you probably can't see them all that well on your screen anyway. But we've got Maps, API, Place, Text Search. That's what we want. We want to replace output with JSON. And parameters would normally be the text search, but like I said, we're not going to do that. We are instead going to give it a type. And why don't I just say lawyer for now? We want to give it a location, and that's going to be a latitude, longitude. So just for the purpose of making sure that our search works, let's just do New York latitude. So I'm going to put 40.7128, comma, 74.0060, and that needs to be a negative for the Western Hemisphere. And then we're also going to want to add, I think I said order by when I was talking before, but it's actually rank by. And we can do that by distance. And lastly, we need to give it a key. And so this is whatever your key is from your Google Cloud console and I'm just going to stick mine in here. Send that off, and invalid request. Let me check that again. We got JSON type rank by key. And let's see, I've got type equals lawyer, and then I put an equal sign after lawyer, so that needs to be a ampersand. Okay, so we should have type location rank by key. Let's try that again. All right, great. So that will get us our closest lawyer to whatever coordinates we pass in, so that's good. Set that aside for now. And let's go into our service, our place service, which should be in services, places service. So we built one for autocomplete. We built one for the details. And now we want a search by type. So let's copy the get place. And let's call it get places. And what we're going to get back is actually a list of places. And instead of our place ID, because we don't know that, we're going to pass in a double for our latitude, a double for our longitude, and string of place type. And so for our URL string, why don't I come back to Postman, grab what I got here, and put that right in there like that. And then we can do just like we've done before. So at the end with key, we can replace the actual value with key embedded. And I don't actually need the curly braces for the key. And let's see our type. So for lawyer, we've got that hard coded. I'm going to put in place type. And so we need the latitude and the longitude, and we'll get those obviously from our parameters here. So we'll take that out. Okay, so we've called this JSON results, and it's really results at that point because we're getting more than one. Just like above, we're actually getting multiple records, so we want to cast that as a list. And then when we return, we first want to map from JSON results. So JSON results.map. We'll call that a place. And we should be able to go right to there, taking the place value. And then lastly, we want to put a semicolon there, cast that all back to a list. All right, great. So that should hit the text search with the coordinates, the place type we're looking for, order it up. We'll get back a list, and then we can pick the top one off the stack in our view. So when we click on one of the chips here, that's the type that we want to search at that time. And so let's visit our application block and create the concept of a selected type. So in our variables, let's create a string for place type. And whenever they click on a chip, we're going to want to toggle the place type to or from that value. So if we come above the dispose, let's create a new function, which will be toggle place type. We'll give it a string, which will be a value. And so that's going to be whatever the value on the chip is. So if it's a church, it'll say church. If it is a campground, it'll say campground. It will match the value in this place types tab, and that's what we're going to pass into the string. So when we set up our chips, we're going to set them to pass back a value equivalent to one of these types if it's selected. And also, if it's the Boolean will be true or false depending on whether the chip has been selected or unselected. So we'll have a Boolean value called selected. And so if the chip is selected, so if it's passing back true, that it's got a check mark now, then our place type is going to be equal to the value. Else, our place type is null. And when that selection is made, this is our time to call our Places service and get the nearest zoo, dog park, whatever they've asked for. So let's say if place type not equal to null, we'll set a variable called places, and we will set that equal to the awaited value of our Places service, get places. And so that's going to need a latitude, a longitude, and we already have our place type, so we're set there. And let's make this asynchronous so we can use await. All right, so we have a bit of a problem here in that we need a latitude and a longitude value. And if we look here, what we did for the selected location is we set ourselves a stream of that location. Now, if we were using RxStart, we could just tap into the value property for the latest value on it and get the latitude and longitude. We're not using RxStart, and I don't want to bring that into this situation. So we're going to do something a little less than ideal and just set ourselves up. In addition to our selected location, we will set a selected location static. And so when we originally come in and we use Geolocator to get our current location, then in that case, we're going to set selected location static equal to a new place. And so place is the object you normally get back from places. And because we're not getting it from places, we just need to kind of fake it. So we'll give it a geometry object. These are the objects you would get out of a places search. And so the location will be a location object, and the latitude will be current location dot latitude. And then we'll set the longitude equal to current location longitude, like that. And it looks like I need to import location. All right, let me format that. Okay, so not a real ideal situation there to have to fake a Google Places result from our geolocator, but that's just how we set it up. And if we used RxDart, none of that would really be necessary. All right, so then when we set our selected location, so when a user types something in here and it goes to it, we're adding to our stream there. So we just also want to use selected location static equals to await places get place. In fact, let's not await that twice. Let's set a variable sLocation equal to this. And then we'll set that sLocation equal to the static. All right, and I hope that's clear why we're doing all that. So then when we come down here, we now have something to grab. So we can say selected location static, latitude, okay, geometry, location, lat, and then our LNG is selected location static, geometry, location, LNG. All right, good. And then we don't want to forget notify listeners so that the place type is updated and our chips will be updated. All right, so speaking of those chips, let's add them. I do have an error here. What did I do? Missing a semicolon after the S location. All right, so let's visit the home screen. Let's add those chips and make it so that we can actually toggle them. And so we have this stack here with 3 containers in it. We've got the map, we've got an overlay, and we've got the search results. So we want to come outside of that stack. And I'm going to use a wrap widget. And the wrap widget will allow us to put filters in. And if we exceed the horizontal width, it will just wrap it around to the next row. It can also put in some horizontal spacing. So we'll put in spacing 8. Give it some children, and the children will be a filter chip. And so we'll give it a label. The label will be a text. And so now we need to visit and decide which of these services we want to offer to our user. So I like campground for the first one just because I know that it's something that usually, if you're in an urban area, you have to scope back for. And so this is just the label. It doesn't have to match the case in the documentation. So we're just going to do campground with a capital L. And then on selected, we're going to get a value, so true or false, whether that chip has been selected. And so we can call our application block toggle place type. And it's going to ask us for a value. So that is the Google value here. So it's lowercase campground, and it looks like it's snake case for anything that is 2 words. So we'll do campground. And then whether it's selected or not is just the val off the chip. So then to show whether it's selected, we just need to refer to application block place type and does it equal campground? And if not, we're not going to select that. And let's give it a background color or a selected color of colors.blue. All right, if we do that, we should see a chip appear on the screen and we should be able to select it, except we're getting an error. What's the problem? Let's see, map place. The method map was called on null. So let's take a look at what's being passed in the URL. Well, it's never getting that far. Let's try that again. Okay, I'm just going to take a look at the URL. Let's pop that into Postman and see what we get. Oh, I got it. So we're singularizing result because we copied and pasted from the places search, but that I can see here in Postman should be results. That's where we should be digging in. So, all right. Let's hot restart. Try this one more time. Okay, we can see campground lights up. Goes away, no error, excellent. All right, so coming back to home screen, so clearly we need a little bit of padding here, so I'm gonna wrap the wrap. Yes, I am, with padding. And so the default is fine. Maybe I could come up above it with a text widget that says filter results. Maybe we can make that a little prettier. It's not the point, but still. All right. Let's wrap that filter results in some padding too. Maybe we'll say find nearest to match the source code. Give it a little style. So text style widget, and say font size 25 and a font weight of font weight bold. There we go. All right, so we got one filter chip, and so let's give ourselves at least a few more. So I'm giving myself a comma here, and then I'm just going to copy 1, 2, 3, 4 more times, whatever you want to do. You can fill the screen with chips if you wish. And so we got campground. If I look at places type here, let's pick out a few more. So let's say bus station. That sounds like fun. Not bus station. Bus station. And so the toggle we want to do is actually lowercase bus underscore station. And then same here. Let's see. ATM. Let's do ATM. You can do anything you want here. ATM. That's the friendly label. And then lowercase for the toggle and the set. Park. Let's do park. I skipped one. Park. And let's see, I have campground back up here, so I need to pick one more. Let's do something that might be out in the sticks. Like me. There's nothing out here in the sticks, so let's do zoo. All right, get all this junk out of here, save that, and I should be able to check each one and have each one get checked. And if I check a different one, it should uncheck bus station and go to zoo. And remember, we're performing the search in the background as we go, so there's a bit of a delay there because of it's got to make a call to the Places API. So in an ideal scenario, you probably have a little bit of a spinner here, just something to indicate to the user that it is thinking. All right, getting near the end here, we have a place. We can't see it on the screen yet, so we are going to want to have some service that lays down the marker for us. And so the easiest way to do that is to keep that all separate in its own service. So inside the services folder, I am going to create a new file. And I'm going to call that marker underscore service. And so this is going to be a class called marker service. And the first thing we want to be able to do is create a marker from any place that we pass it to. So when we get our campground back or our bus station, we can slap down a marker there. So that's going to be of type marker. That's going to be imported from Google Maps. And we'll call the function create marker from place. Seems nice and descriptive. Pass in a place. And so we'll need a marker ID, need some kind of unique ID for each marker. And so place.name seems like something that's going to be distinct for that. It doesn't really matter what it is as long as it's unique to the marker. And then we can create a marker and return it. So like I said, it needs a marker ID. We'll just pass it the marker ID we created up above. It needs to know if it's going to be draggable. We can create an info window if we want. So this will create a little information around the marker if we hover over it. So we can give it a title of place name and a snippet of place.vicinity. So that's why we grab those two fields. And of course it needs a position, so that is going to be a lat longe object. And so that will be our place geometry location lat, comma, place geometry location LNG. And doesn't like my marker ID. Oh, I need to cast it to a marker ID object. So marker ID like that, and then pass the value inside here. And so we could hook up our marker to be on the screen. It might or might not be within the bounds of the map. We could get lucky. But let's continue on in our marker service and complete what we need to do. When we get a marker, it actually needs to be part of a set of markers that you pass to the map, although we're only going to have one in there. But when we get that set of markers with one in it, we need to pass it to a function that's going to determine where the northwest and northeast bounds and southeast, southwest bounds of the map should be. And so we'll write that function up here. It needs to return a lat longe bounds object. And I'll just call it bounds. And so what we'll do is pass it a set of markers that we've created, which again, we'll only have one, but it needs to be in a set. And from that, if there are no markers, so if the markers equals null or markers dot is empty, then we're just going to return null here. We're not going to bother setting the bounds. But if they're not, we're going to return a function that we're going to write that is going to set these bounds, create bounds, and we're going to map each of the markers in our set using the position and then casting that to a list. All right, and then the create bounds function is actually quite complex, and I got it off of Google. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to post it on the screen here for you, and go ahead and hit pause. Paste this in. I will get rid of this sidebar here, make it as wide as possible, and go ahead and hit pause and copy this right here. All right, so with that marker service all set, let's come back to our application block, and now we can complete this toggle place type. So we've got our places here. So inside of this place type does not equal null. We have some more work to do in here. And what we want to do is we want to create a set of markers that we are going to pass into the map. And then we're going to create new bounds off of that using the bounds function we just created a marker service. So up at the top, let's bring in our marker service. And let's also give ourselves a new list of markers. And so we'll create a new list of type marker. And instantiate a new list, and that should be markers. No, markers like that. Get your R's in the right spot. So I'm not using null safety here, so I'm getting the list, getting the warning that this is depreciated, so I'm going to ignore that for now. Coming back inside that place type, I can clear my list of markers. So at this point, I want markers to be nothing. So every time a place is selected, clear them out, start over, and if places that length is greater than 0, we are going to create a new marker. And we're going to call our marker service create marker from place. And we are going to pass the first result we get back from Places, because remember, they are sorted by nearness, and so we want the closest one. And so we can call markers.add to add it to our list. All right, that's one marker. The second marker that we want to put down is for our own location. So we will pass location marker marker service, create marker from place, just like we did from above, but this time we want collected or selected location static. And we'll go ahead and add that to our marker list as well. So we've got 2 in there. And that's all that we're going to want. And now that we have a list of markers, we can set our bounds off that. So we'll create a variable called bounds. We'll set that equal to marker service dot bounds. And inside here, we want to create a set of markers like that. Okay, and we want to pass this into a stream that we can listen to on our front end. So let's come up to the top here and create a new stream controller of lat longe bounds, and we will call that bounds and set it equal to stream controller of type lat longe bounds, like so. All right, so then we can come down to the bottom, and when we have our underscore bounds, we can do bounds add bounds. Excellent. So we should be all set here in the back end. Let's go to our map. So we'll go to homescreen.dart, and we are going to want to pass our markers to our map. So let's find our map, and anywhere we want here in the property list, we can create a property for markers. And for them, we are going to create a set of marker.of, and we can get our application block markers. All right, so that should lay down the marker, but we do need to adjust the bounds still. So let's come up here in our init state, and what we'll do is create a listener, just like we did here. So let's set up a stream subscription. We'll call that bounds subscription. And we will set bound subscription equal to application block dot bounds dot stream dot listen. And so the thing we're listening to are bounds, and we're going to want an async function, because we're going to need to create our controller by calling Google Map Controller await map controller dot future. And once we have that controller, we can animate the camera just like we did before, camera update. But unlike we did before, no, we're not going to set a new camera position. We're going to set new latitude, longitude bounds. And we're going to give it a pixel padding value of 50 or whatever you want there. That's just going to give you a little space around the markers. All right, let's cancel that bounds description or bound subscription just to make sure we don't tie up any resources. And let's do a hot restart. All right, let's say I want to go to Albuquerque. I was going to hope that came up on a suggestion because I sure as heck can't spell it. And we want the nearest ATM in downtown Albuquerque. And there it is. And if we want a campground, we are probably going to zoom out pretty far here to get out here. Zoo in Albuquerque. Do they have one? They do. Right downtown. A park. And I could hit bus station, but I think you get the idea. So that's going to do it for this series. Hope you found it helpful. The GitHub repo is down below. Make sure you get your own key and make sure you have it in 3 places. You have it in the Places service, you have it in the Android manifest, and then you also have it in your info plist. Or check that, the appdelegate.swift is where that goes. So make sure you have it in all 3 places. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this series. Take care.